Meditation Museum. This afternoon we're going to be engaging in an interesting discussion focused on the topic of, is the power of silence greater than the power of science? And here with us this afternoon to discuss that with us is Sister Jenna, who is the director of the Brahma Kumaris, Washington, D.C. and the Meditation Museum. And joining her is Dr. Karthik, whose research is nanotechnology. And actually, just to get us started, because I'm not a science-minded person, Dr. Karthik, if you could just give us an explanation as to what nanotechnology entails.
To answer your question, nanotechnology basically means the science of nano-dimensional things. And as we see that in this times of energy crisis, the nano species takes more precedence over bulk species in terms of micro and milli, because nano species have some quantum effects which has edge over other materials that we know. And by going to the nano dimensions, we get some efficiency out of these materials that we will not get with conventional materials. So that's why the whole technology about these nano-dimensional quantities is much of significant interest to the scientific community, because it has better efficiency. I can put it that way.
Wonderful. And Sister Jenna, in order for us to fully grasp our discussion this afternoon, I'd really like if you could share with us what you consider to be the power of silence, because I think when you hear the word silence, most people think, okay, well, we're being quiet, no talking, but how does silence give us a power? Can you kind of describe that for us?
Thank you. I thought Nana was a car in India that was cost $2,500. You know, there's this little car in India, and they'd actually been sold out before they even got on the road. And a friend of mine in India who runs one of the stores there, he has a little red Nano. So when I go shopping in India, he goes, Sister Jenna, please take my car. It's Nano. It's Nano. So when I heard that Dr. Karthik was a nano specialist, I thought that's all he did was build a small little car. So we need to know some more about it.
I think that might be one of the applications, even though the name is kind of like a misnomer for a big car. But it's kind of nano in terms of, it's a relative term, so it's kind of nano to the other cars running in India. And you know that India needs more space since the population is growing.
It's true. And now whenever you go to India, you see these little cars that they're doing such work. But the massive thing and the most powerful thing about India is that 20 people can fit in one little nano car. Now that's a science in itself, I have to tell you. There are times that we would be driving from our headquarters in Mount Abu, and we have to take our flight out of Ahmedabad, which is in another state called Gujarat. So where the Brahma Kumaris headquarters is, it's on at the top of Aravalli Mountain, which is 5,000 feet above sea level. And so when we're driving down from this beautiful sacred ashram where there are 20,000 yogis, all who are carrying the same purpose of self-transformation, and you're driving down from this little golden age of heavenly world, and you see like 20, 40 people in a little car, it is a science. And you wonder, what is it that allows individuals that, yes, it's for the sake of survival, but the fact that you know how to maneuver your way into a space and works, and these are human beings, it is a science. You can't do that here. Barely we even want to pick up anybody who even needs a ride in our car, and there's 3 more seats available. You know, we find it even hard to go an extra 30 minutes to pick up a friend to bring them somewhere. And so I think that on the personal level, in terms of Dominique's question, silence is an extremely great power of the human soul. And perhaps many of us are not even aware that when the soul first comes into life, it actually comes from silence. And when the life changes and when the life situations begin to take place, it's only the experiences in life that have been painful that creates a lot of noise. You find that in life situations, if there is only joy and success and peace and happiness, you would walk with the power of silence. Because there's no obstruction to your original religion of the soul. Now, the silence is the nature of the soul, and when a soul carries and embodies the attitude and the personality of someone who refuses to hold on to the negative, that's a very silent soul. It's not to say that they haven't gone through negative situations. Perhaps they have. But there are a few people, and quite a few that I know, they've reached a point in life that if they were to hold on to the negative scenes of their drama, they would have not understood what the game was all about. And yet, sometimes it's those negative things that we go through that sometimes make us want to move back to our silence. You understand? So sometimes you need both. And so when a person begins to embody the presence of silence, it becomes a transformational presence. And not only is silence transformational, but silence is also a great sustainer to humanity. Why I think the world is depleting, and what I know that in the teachings of the Brahmakumaris it becomes clear that if there isn't pause moments, if there isn't silent moments for life or in life, then there's no growth. Because energy keeps getting used, and used, and used, and used, and used, and used, and used. And if we don't take a chance to just feel or remember what that silence, the power of that silence, then we're just going to get very depleted, and we won't have the power of silence. And have you ever noticed in history that when we were growing up, silence was known to be golden? But if a hardened criminal has done awful things, he's put in solitary confinement to be in silence, so his conscience can let him see what he has done. So we have been kind of educated that silence is a bad thing. And then we were also told that silence is golden. Who do you believe?
I have an opinion on that. I think when you put a criminal to a solitary confinement, it more is an involuntary act of the criminal. He doesn't want to go into silence, so you are kind of forcing him to go into silence. So I think that's the conflict there. And for yourself, if you're a yogi and you want to go into silence, it's a very voluntary act. Nobody is forcing you. So the forcing is what is the punishment rather than the silence.
Okay, that's a very cute point. But I wouldn't be in that position if I was doing something naughty. And so even though he's being forced to be placed in a solitary confinement, of course, he's afraid to look at his actions. I have a very good friend from South Africa. His name is Marcus. He runs a lot of corporations there. And he was in the apartheid movement. And they had arrested quite a number of them. And the general there, or the the police, right, told him that you had a choice. We'll put you with the rest of the guys, or if you really want to really have a hard time and just deal with the issues, we'll put you in solitary confinement. By then he had started his spiritual journey, and he had realized that silence was a good thing. So he told them, well, I guess I'll just have to go to solitary confinement. And he was in bliss, for months, because he hadn't done anything that was against the laws as such. He was trying to defend a truth that everybody else had forgotten. And so where his friends went into the prison camp with everybody, they were struggling with people and their karmas, not taking that chance to look within for change. He was on his own, creating his change, making his change happen. But I do understand your point, and it's true. When you're forced to look at your story, when you're forced to look at your karmas and you're not ready to look at it, it can be painful, but only if you don't have the wisdom as to why I need to look at myself to change.
Now, Sister Jenna, you said that the soul is born in silence. I think sometimes people have a hard time understanding themselves in terms of a soul. What is a soul? And how do we recognize that and understand how silence directly impacts the soul, and in turn, how that directly impacts every aspect of our lives?
You know, I think the original stillness of the soul is a very sacred origin. And if you look at everyone, when a baby is first created and they're out of the womb, they come with this subtle, beautiful, serene expression. I mean, yes, you have to slap that little baby to wake him up and go, ah, you know, but after that, when you put the baby in the crib and you look at that creation that has been recreated, what do you see? Purity, love, silence. So it proves that the origin of life came from a silent existence. But what happens after that, as I shared earlier, gets changed. It goes through what you might say entropy, perhaps.
Could you explain what entropy is and how that relates in terms of science and silence?
In terms of science, the definition of entropy is it is the measurement of disorder, and a spontaneous reaction happening naturally is always towards maximum disorder. So for a confined system, most of the time it goes from order to a disorder, and it's irreversible unless an external force acts on the disordered system to make it ordered again, which is what we see in the quantum level, or you see it also in the bulk level. You need some kind of police force to get back a disordered system into an ordered system. But chaos happens naturally. Nobody needs to do anything about it. Chaos is natural. It's spontaneous. So silence for the soul is kind of something that is an ordered system, right? If a class of kids are silent, that means they are in an ordered system. While if they are all jumping on the desk and tearing each other, then you say it's chaos. It's spontaneous. There's no need for a teacher to do that. But to silence them and to have a discipline, you need some kind of policing. So always ordering needs energy. So it's like putting back the water which came down the mountain back to the mountain. You need to pump it up. So you always need to give energy, or in terms we can say effort, to make a disordered system ordered. It doesn't happen naturally.
Karthik and I were actually at a retreat center on January 1st in upstate New York, Peace Village Learning and Retreat Center, and we had actually heard a class by Sister Mohini, who's the president of Brahma Kumaris. And after our early morning wake up at 4 o'clock, we were having tea at 5, and this was our conversation. How can silence become a tool to put back the energy in the world that's searching for energy? And I was wondering if Karthik could actually share some of the things that came out of that question that I raised, because what I asked him as a scientist and somebody who has started his spiritual journey within the last year is, can us as human beings be the resource of energy that the world is seeking? And in our Raj Yoga meditation practice, we have an emphasis on the soul as the subtle energy connecting to the Supreme Soul, so that energy can come back into the system. So I asked Karthik, tell me, how can this be proven to the world? Because the oil reserves, this, that, even finances, just people's energy is running low. So tell me, on a spiritual level, how could you actually tell me that? What's the role of yoga, so to speak, right? And the second thing that I'd asked him was, and he made a very powerful point. He says science can get the resources, but they don't have anywhere to hold it. They don't have something to keep the capacity of resource, so we keep using it as it comes. We don't have a storage capacity. Do you remember? was just wondering if you could share more of that real thought-provoking conversation we had about the role of yoga, the role of an individual who meditates, and how that plays out in a role of matter.
Definitely, Sister Jenna, I would really like to share it to everybody. The basic concept when Sister Jenna was talking about soul as energy, the first thing which struck me is, if soul is energy, and if we have all these energy laws, then the energy laws should also apply to the soul, even though the soul is metaphysical. It's out of physical realm, but as an energy, it should still obey the energy laws. So what I kind of thought is, soul is eternal, right? And we also know from science that energy is eternal. So energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. And so that applies to the soul. It can neither be created nor be destroyed. It's eternal. It's always there. The second point is, as the soul comes into the body, there is a energy-matter interaction, right? And we see in the physical sense of it, that whenever there is matter and energy, they interact, they have the law of entropy kicking in, because now you made a system. So when you have a matter energy, there is a system, and this system kicks in the law of entropy and the other thermodynamic laws. So now we are going from an ordered system to a disordered system, and that's what we see as a collective group of people, that the world is going into disorder, and it's going to reach a maximum state of disorder, before which an external force, let's say in terms of here, it could be God, who has to come and restore it back to order. So when we said this, then I thought, by going to disorder, you also dissipate energy. That's why you are going into disorder, because when you say energy is converted to work, the energy is spent and you cannot take it back. It goes into all other forms of energy. Light, heat, sound, anger. So if you think of all your emotions, they are kind of energies that you are releasing, which cannot be taken back as a useful work, right? So we do so many activities that cannot be taken as useful work. It's all wasted energy, and that's actually building the disorder in the system. So for me, we need an external force, and the external force is only coming when we reach equilibrium, which is the maximum disordered state, which was very, very interesting to me. And that's when we thought we should share this with everybody, because this is kind of like an enlightenment for me too. Connecting soul as an energy to the scientific physical energy, and see that all the energy laws are being applied thoroughly to the soul, even though it is metaphysical. It has no mass. But what intrigued me more was, the soul has many functions, right? So the soul has memory, so it's like a storage capacity for data storage. The soul is also a function as a material for energy storage, so that you could work. So if you see somebody working tirelessly, you say that, oh, he's a tireless worker, he has a lot of energy. So what energy are you referring to? Not only the physical energy, but also the energy of the soul. That he has the drive, the force to do it. So if you think on that sense, then there should be some kind of way that our soul is behaving like a capacitive material. Just like a capacitor which could store energy, we should be able to store energy. But what builds that energy? What kind of work makes our soul store the energy so that we could use it for some useful purpose? So this is something that we got deep into, and then came the point of silence. So I thought maybe silence is the greatest work that you could do within yourself to store the energy, to build the energy in. Because silence needs it's almost like you are moving a charge from an uncharged state to a charged state so that you have a potential energy within the soul. It takes a lot of effort. And so where do you get this power from? For example, if you need to store energy, it has to be from some external source. So what is the external source for this soul to store the energy? So let's say we are just like a capacitive storage material. We should have an external perennial source. And I couldn't think of any other source other than the Supreme Soul, God, who has to be the perennial power source from whom we need to take the power and build our storage capacity in the soul. Now, what is preventing us from doing this? What is preventing us from doing this is that when the soul is using its energy for wasteful thinking, that is a big waste of energy. Like it's just like you are just using the battery for something that you don't need it for, and then you are just dissipating all the energy, emptying it, so that you don't even give it time to be recharged. So I would really say that maybe silence is the key. And so when you go into yourself and you are silent and you connect with God, the perennial source of energy, you can start building your energy into the soul. And then you can use it for a very useful purpose, like transformation, for peace. So I think it's a very beautiful concept if you really think that if you can use physical energy laws to metaphysics and people could understand better what we are trying to say. Like this could be a very useful way of a nice analogy so that people could understand what we are actually doing and what we should be doing.
Imagine 5 a.m. in the morning, and this is our conversation, because one of the things that also struck me in the conversation was that the yogis, that they have a certain kind of capacity of energy because of their discipline and practice of pulling energy from that supreme source. So Karthik was sharing, if you notice that if a yogi stops connecting to the source, you will observe that they will start to have less capacity to function in that divine way, so to speak. And so the point that he was sharing is that there are certain things that are made, and they're only made with a particular amount of capacity to last. And then when the capacity is over, that's it. And no matter how much you keep trying to put outside energy, it will only go based on how much energy you put into it. But when I was asking him, so you mean to tell me that when I'm sitting in yoga with God, with that supreme energy, what is actually happening? He says your capacity is multiplying millions of times over.
I would like to add a point here. Like the soul has a special, let's say if you are going to see the soul has a special functional material. There are so many capacitive materials out there. Carbon nanotubes have been the latest in this realm of materials chosen to be having supercapacitive storage. But I would say the soul is the real supercapacitive storage because there is unlimited space for the energy to be stored in the soul, unlike physical materials. Every physical material has a limitation. There is a maximum energy that you could store in a material, but soul, you can see in terms of memory, in terms of data storage, in terms of energy storage, it's unlimited. Nobody knows how much it can store, how much it can give back. And it looks like to me, even though it is metaphysical, it's a very efficient material. If I see it as a material, it's a very efficient material. Soul can take so many things. It can really accommodate things. So if you see a strong person, a person who's old, he's a strong soul. which means you cannot shake him. He's unshakable in any situation. He can take whatever comes in front of him, face any situations, however bad they are. So you look up to those kind of people, and you have always seen, the history has always shown, there are so many people that you have been inspired with for their courage and bravery and power of accommodation and power of leadership. Soul is an outstanding material in terms of energy storage, and if you see, it can also share this energy stored with others without wasteful spending, as long as you use it for the intended purpose, which is kind of useful to others, and you also feel satisfied. See, there is no other material which gives that kind of attributes except the soul. There is no physical material which can give that. Everything else, when used, gets down, but the soul is getting more and more stronger the more and more you use it for a good cause. So that's where the soul is an outstanding material in terms of energy and data storage. It's really outstanding.
Thank you. There's a question that came to mind when we were discussing the law of entropy and how everything moves towards chaos. I was wondering to myself, okay, if everything moves towards chaos, and we've discussed that with the soul, what helps us is the power of silence, and that renews us, that restores our energy. I'd like to look at that on a bigger world view, because all around the world we see that the world itself is moving more and more towards chaos. We have natural disasters, we have civil uprising, and I'd like to discuss how does the power of silence apply to our worldview and help recharge not only the personal soul, but maybe kind of the soul of the world, recharge the world's energy? How does the power of silence help us in these urgent situations?
I think that there are individuals who have already started the journey of returning to silence. And there are individuals who are still trapped in the chaos. And so I feel that sometimes being trapped in the chaos is a cry for silence. It's a cry for peace. But the methodology that is used to get the peace and the silence only makes it even louder for that individual. And I guess similar to what Dr. Karthik is sharing is that when energy reaches that boiling massive mass, is that it means it's actually about to die. I believe you were educating me that after a while the planets, when they're going to die, they get bigger and bigger and bigger until they create a black hole. You can correct me on the scientific term.
Usually stars do what we call Chandrasekhar limit.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you see a red sun, and then it's when it reaches the 3 times mass of the sun of our solar system, it's going to explode and then become a black hole. So the Chandrasekhar limit is the threshold for the red sun, and then it explodes, and sometimes that's what creates black holes.
So then on the spiritual level, I think that it's safe to say that we are reaching that point of explosion, where there will be a black hole, where we will all have to somehow begin to maybe just step away from just the way that we've been functioning and go back to light. Because if we can't consciously go back to light, like my friend who consciously chose solitary confinement, then perhaps some of us are going to be forced to go back to the light, and it will feel like it's not so pleasant. And so I think the uprising that we are seeing in the world today is because of what we teach in Raja Yoga meditation are the 5 vices, which I always call cutely algae: anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego. And as you so well said, that if you use your energy in any one of these areas, it doesn't give you back the return you want. At least if the soul has to use energy, that the soul use energy to elevate other people, then at least, even though it's not coming back to you, you have left a contribution to humanity. So you will walk with a sense of purpose, so you'll feel like there's a sense of enrichment for your life, as if you've made your mark, you know. If part of my soul is to use energy, as the scientist and as the doctor is saying, then it should be used for something good. And when you look at charity to mankind, and when you look at offering spiritual knowledge to mankind, and when you look at giving your life to a cause that is not about putting people in the black hole, but it's about moving them closer to the light, then your conscience won't bite you to say you've just wasted your life. You come to the conclusion that my life is being used in a worthwhile way. Now the second part of the equation is my connection to the, what did you call it, the perennial source. I love that, you know. Anyone ever thought God would be called perennial source? I mean, that is so coolly scientific. You know, but really when you go to this source, then there is that other aspect in the soul that has to be filled for something to be used later on. And similarly, if we as a civilization, if we don't fill ourselves with that capacity of silent divinity, then there is no future. And so as spiritual individuals or people who are feeling the call to go back to light and to go back to silence, it means I'm no longer going to contribute to the chaos and the calamities of the world. It's no longer my department to live my energy like that. But it means that my life and energy is towards a co-creation of a world that will continue after the black hole sucks everything up. And it'll be a world of light, a world of divinity, a world of individuals who've been building capacity over a long period of time. And those same souls can open up civilization for the future. So I'm not somebody, nor do the Brahma Kumaris believe in doom and gloom or the end of the world. But I do believe that we do believe that the world will change. It can't continue the way that it's continuing. Just whilst coming here, I was having a conversation with a few individuals in the car. And I go, why don't we get along? It's so easy to just be nice and pleasant, but it happens when you might have knowledge of something. You're telling someone to educate the person, to awaken their knowledge, they're telling you no. That's why you don't get along. Because your energy is just not flowing. And when it's not flowing, you feel that you don't want to waste your energy on someone or something, because it's not going to give you back what is really needed. And one of the most frustrating things in life is to sometimes end up in relationships with people who don't match your vision. And it's not about walking away from people. If it was that easy, we would have done that a long time ago. I think everyone would be living on an island by themselves. Right? Right? It's not that. That's not the solution. The solution is to see how I can build that energy of capacity, that even when I share wisdom with somebody, whether it's spiritual wisdom or a material wisdom of something I know more about, that something in the person's mind surrenders to it because of my power of silence. I can transform that person's vision and help them up. You know, so I think that the chaos that's increasing in the world in terms of civil uprising, look at the Middle East. I think the natural calamities, I don't know if they're increasing, but I do know that the awareness of individuals becoming aware of what's happening around the world at the same time is increasing. Yeah. And so that vibration of fear that the world is feeling at the same time is creating a great sense of urgency in people, in which we are all feeling a need to do something. We're all feeling a need to get back to something. The thing is, we don't know what it is. And what we're saying, it is silence. And so this awareness through social media, I mean, we have a live news stream going on today. So just this awareness of social media, where when something becomes viral, you have 1, 5, 7 million people having the same feeling at the same time, that's huge. And if you're showing people a tsunami in Japan, that's big. And that's having an impact on everyone's mind, because everyone's having the same thought and feeling at the same time. And so similarly, what if we could start to co-create this practice of creating this viral practice of having silence in the morning, silence during the day, maybe every 2 hours or every hour, take 1 minute, go to the perennial source of power, come back, perform your actions. The quality of silence, it is a virtue. And what you might observe in the world today that's missing is virtuosity. Because if somebody has virtues, they won't fight with you. If somebody lacks virtue, put them up.
Yeah, I would like to add a point to Sister Jenna. When you say you are doing a good deed or a good cause, the energy that is spent is the lowest. And if you are having a pure feeling of doing good, and the other person is also having a pure feeling, we create what is called a constructive interference. So a constructive interference is good. But if you are giving something bad and the other person is also giving something bad, that's a destructive interference. So that energy is not useful to either of the people involved. So I would put it in this way, that good deeds are like you have a capacity of energy stored in yourself and you are using it for a good cause, and that in turn creates a controlled nuclear reaction which is benefiting everybody, like giving power. But when the same energy is interacting in a destructive way, it is like an uncontrolled nuclear reaction. Exactly what happens in uncontrolled nuclear reaction is explosion, destruction. So that's why we stress on the point that every energy that is spent within, it should be for a good cause. So you are basically controlling, and the energy is in the lowest efficient state. It's not dissipating faster, because an explosion is having more power than a normal nuclear reaction, the explosion. And what is power? Power is the rate of discharging your energy. So when you do bad things, your rate of discharging from the soul is much faster than when you do a good thing, because it's in a much more ordered state. So the free energy is less spent. So you are able to do more good deeds. So you can do only 2 bad deeds, you can do 10 good deeds. What would you choose? So that's something to think about.
And that's very powerful, because even looking at the uprising in the Middle East, you don't see a result, because both energies that are interplaying with each other are both very reduced energy. And so you're getting like a meltdown. But everybody wants the optimistic vision that we should be happy and peaceful. And so I don't necessarily feel anyone is doing anything wrong, because if you don't know, how can it be wrong for you? But once you know and you are aware of it, it is then that you can declare, this is not a best choice for me. But there's a very interesting component to this whole aspect of energy, because when it comes to spiritual knowledge of the soul, and the quality of the soul, and the journey of the soul, and the capacity for the soul to make choices, there needs to be power. Because that child who has grown up to be maybe a leader of a country, who is afraid of letting go of a position or a seat they sat in for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and all they know that that's their title, that's their ego identity. And they're willing to sacrifice and put their souls to the ground because of an illusion. At one point in time, can we put power in a soul like that and say, it's not worth it? Trust me, if you want everything back in life, just give up everything now, consciously. You know? And so sometimes people always say, you know, Sister Jenna, why do you all live such a simple life? Your lives are so much like this, or you live such a renunciate life. It's because I'm greedy. I want everything back. You know, I've understood the law of energy and how it interplays in the human factor. And if this black hole is going to happen, and if this whole thing is about the stars about to explode, then let me start to invest my energy in something that will bring back to me everything I've ever wanted, and not put it in the other direction. At least that's how I've understood it in Raj Yoga.
Yeah, spiritually it could be very beneficial for people to use their energy for a good cause. Because if you say about somebody who's in power for 40 years, I'm sure that the energy that he has spent has already gone, and right now he's an empty vessel who cannot restore his energy because he's in his reached this equilibrium and in his maximum disordered state. So unless some external force like the people come and put back the system into order, he's going to be in a disordered state because he has reached equilibrium. There is no way he's coming back to his ordered state. So that's the only way.
Powerful. And so unless the individual gets an introduction to the perennial source or to the supreme source, there is no hope. And so what the Brahma Kumaris has been really doing for the last 75 years, and this is our 75th year of existence, is to consistently try to give this message, look, you've got to get back to the source of energy. Because all of us as living human beings will reach the point of entropy where we can't go any further into our decay. It's just going to be chaos. And perhaps we might see that in our relationships with people. It's not in order. There's got to be one or two people that you're not getting along with. Or half of a person. You know, there's got to be somebody that there's an issue with, right? And if you try to, if I even asked you to emerge all the folks in your life that you don't seem to feel this positive energy between the both of you, you'll see that there might be a list. So it's as if maybe there's a part of me that's reached that point. This relationship is very strained. I don't feel order in this relationship. What can I do to straighten it out? I need to go to the perennial source. Because there's no conscious way I can try to fight my way and prove to that person, look, you owe me that respect. You owe me that money. You owe me that responsibility. You owe me that love. I gave you enough of it. It's time that you give it back. And if the person isn't giving it back, there must be some spiritual scientific reason for that. So the only way to pay it back is to go to the perennial source, who I call Baba, who Karthik calls perennial source. Same person, same person. You know, and it touches my heart deeply because for me, I think civilization has hope. The whole agenda now is how do we make it viral that there is hope if there's a connection to the perennial source of the human soul. And that's what we want to do. And if everybody can participate in getting that out, in getting that message out, the black hole will finish off quick enough that we can see the golden star, the golden life, the golden kind of life that we believe we should be living.
Yeah, definitely we need to make effort on that. Put the water back onto the mountain.
Absolutely. And I was thinking as this discussion was going on, you said, you know, we always have to put our energy towards something positive. And Sister Jenna, you had mentioned something earlier that perhaps there aren't more natural disasters and more uprisings right now. We're just more aware of it because we're so connected around the world with the communication systems that we have. And I think it would be interesting to kind of analyze when all of our thoughts around the world are turning to a specific situation, has science been able to pick up on the impact that these thoughts are having? If we all turn to fear, is that impacting a situation? If we all turn to love, and project those thoughts, how does that affect a situation? And if any research has been conducted to link how science and thoughts are connected?
I'm sure there are so many. I know of one institute of noetic sciences. They are looking into thought and how you can kind of tap into or measure thoughts of different kinds. There is also different research going on, I think, in University of Houston about like delta waves and all that. Like it's kind of like the lowest energy waves that you have when you don't have any kind of tension or anything. Mostly, it happens in normal individuals during sleep. But if your mind is stable when you are conscious and awake, it could still be generated even though you are awake, which kind of indicates your stability. So I'm sure like there are different tools. There's a grid, I think, by Bob Drach. Yeah, so it kind of measures the vibrations around and tells you like whether it's good vibrations or bad vibrations. People are trying to get some kind of tool, but the thing is, when you try to measure something, you kind of perturb the system, and if you don't perturb the system, you cannot measure it. So that might not show you the reality picture, because sometimes these are so subtle that when you try to go and measure it, you might disturb it. So that's something that we have to strike a balance when you're trying to measure these kind of things.
But even if we haven't been able to measure it in a tangible way through science, I definitely think that people feel it, because that's why we keep doing it. Whenever there's a tragedy, we have moments of silence for those who have passed on, for those who are grieving. So even if maybe we can't measure it through science, we can feel it, and that's why we continue to do it.
That's your greatest tool. Feelings is your greatest tool. There's nothing which can beat that, because you enter into a happy vibrational atmosphere, like a marriage. You know how it feels, and you enter into a funeral. You know how it feels. You don't go and laugh in a funeral, and nobody needs to say that you cannot laugh here. It's understood. Your feeling is the greatest tool for your, and I don't think any scientific instrument can beat that.
Definitely, as human beings, we are able to pick up vibrations. Some of us understand what they mean, and some of us don't. If I'm not mistaken, I think just about 99% of individuals who come to the Meditation Museum, they've all felt something the minute they've entered into the space. Am I right? And is it the space that's created vibrations, or the people in the space? It's got to be the people in the space. And so if you go into a nightclub, you get a completely different feeling in a different space. It's a space. But the thoughts and the feelings and the consciousness of the people, the minute you go in, you either want to grab a drink or dance on the floor, or find your soulmate. I don't know, something like that. And so it never works. Or leave. Or leave. And so the whole aspect of, I think, your own purity increasing becomes your spiritual scientific gadget to know if you're in a safe environment or a harmful place. And when your purity capacity, which is connected to silence, when it begins to increase, that purity becomes like a karmic protection for you, where you walk feeling the sense of just knowing where to go and where not to go. And so where, you might have tools now where everybody's monitoring everything you do and say, and everybody's reading everything that you're writing on an email or a text. Okay, so everybody knows your business, but nobody really knows what lies in your heart. And so when you sit in yoga with the Supreme, with the perennial power, with Bala, you can tune into things that you just can't on the human level. Because to me, I think what you see physically in the world is such a reduction of the capacity of the soul, really. You know, it's not the whole story. And when you see it in its extremely chaotic stage, you really realize the degeneration of the soul. You know? So the instrument required to pick up vibrations is purity of the soul, the silence of the soul. You can know what's going on in the heart of a person before they speak. Then you can help your brother or your sister. You'll talk to somebody, and because both of you are very close, you say to each other, what's going on? You okay? The person doesn't say a word to you. They just know what's in your heart. A scientist can't pick that up. So, engage in a spiritual practice of some sort. And don't be afraid of silence. It's your original capacity, it's your original power anyway. And you'll find that when you start to sit in silence, it's very hard, because a lot of stuff keeps coming up. Don't worry, eventually it'll get quiet. Just don't give up. It took a while to get noisy, so give yourself just a little bit more time to really remember the root of your capacity and power is to be still inside, is to be silent.
Go ahead.
I was just, I wanted to invite anyone in the audience, if you have questions, please, because we've been touching on such a fantastic topic, please do let us know if you have any questions or just comments or thoughts that have come to your mind during this discussion.
I'm sure this has been a very thought-provoking conversation, hasn't it? Right? I hope it's been good. Yeah.
In the state of silence, what happens to your thought process?
In the state of silence, what happens to the thought process is that your thoughts become slower. Your thoughts are more, they're not as focused in people, places, things, or situations, but your thoughts are more engaged in the quality of the human soul's existence. As I shared earlier on in the conversation, is that why there's so much chaos is that there's a lack of virtuosity in the soul. Because if I am beginning to return to my original virtues of the soul, then that is silence, and that is peace, and that is purity. And that doesn't need a lot of things. It's like you go to Tiffany's, they have a certain amount. You go to a dollar store, there's 100 of everything. So when my quality of thoughts are getting deeply rooted into silence, it comes from my connection with the perennial source. And when I'm experiencing the love and the purity and the wisdom from the connection, then my thoughts don't need to be so much to try to find an experience for me. I'll be living in the experience.
Do you ever reach a thoughtless state?
Many people in meditation and spiritual practice expect to reach a thoughtless stage. I don't necessarily think you can, due to the fact that once the soul is in matter, it has a karmic story. But the thoughts that it engages in are thoughts that are very divine and pure and natural, according to the natural nature of the soul. So when anyone decides to embark upon meditation or spirituality, please don't expect you to stop thinking. It's not natural. Once the soul is in the body, it should be thinking. But it should be thinking thoughts that are based on the original and eternal sense of the soul. For example, when we sit for meditation, we turn inwards. And we become aware that the original nature of the soul is divinity. Those are thoughts. So I go to the perennial source of where I get power from. So in order for me to feel something from that energy, I can sometimes create in my mind, it's my father, it's my mother, it's my best friend, my beloved. And I start to experience a feeling from that Supreme Soul, which starts to give me an attainment and an experience which is divine, but I'm able to hold it in me, because that's an energy I don't spend. You get it? So I'm holding now that experience in me which is divine. Now how I use that divinity in action is a whole discussion on karma and how it comes back to me or how it stays away from me.
When you were talking about silence, and then you're talking about stillness. You can be quiet and be moving around. That's, to me, that's not silence.
Right.
To be still and to be connected to the perennial being,
Mm.
you really need to be still, not just silent.
Right.
You know, they were talking about yoga. Some people don't know what is yoga, but for prayer, I was raised as a Christian, and then later on I learned about the Eastern
Philosophies.
but still I can connect through that.
Yeah.
But you have to be really still
Yeah.
and breathe still and connect. You can be silent, you know, doing anything, but to be still in silence.
The aspect of stillness, there's a physical form. You can sit still, and you can sit to be quiet inside, but sometimes that's a challenge. Sometimes you can sit still physically and internally pull the perennial being in you and feel stillness and silence. It depends on the individual's efforts on a day-to-day basis. However, I do want to encourage that it is not just when you're sitting in stillness that you sit to have a connection with the perennial source. I do think it's imperative, especially in our culture and day and age, to incorporate a connection with the perennial being when you are walking and moving around. If you find that majority of your life is an active life, is it not? So then where are your thoughts? So if I can connect to the Supreme Soul while I'm walking and moving around, this helps in developing my power of silence.
So you can practice your inner silence while doing
Yes.
your daily.
I think it's very important to do so. I find that some of the students at the BKs, the ones who struggle with meditation, are the ones who don't incorporate that meditation practice during the day. But the ones who are very good in yoga, when they sit in silent meditation, that they're continuously having a dialogue with the perennial being about the journey of their lives, about the journey of time, about who and what he is and what he's here to do. And so that inner conversation with another soul is giving that soul an experience which is quiet. It is incognito. It is that person's property that they hold. And so when they sit to be still to remember God, it's not difficult. It's natural.
So it's a skill.
It's a gradual skill, but when you take the Raj Yoga meditation course for 7 days, it becomes pretty easy to understand it. But after you get the guidelines of how to incorporate that, a consistent discipline and practice is required until it becomes natural.
I have a question for Professor, and it relates to the merging of science and spirituality. And I have been doing some reading, and it seems, and I'd like you to talk about that, the concept that reality is results of your thoughts, and that science is bringing us to that realization, and how can science bring us closer to that, and so that everyone has the understanding that we create reality with our thoughts.
To answer your question correctly, it is the collective awareness. We already have the tools. We have Twitter, Facebook, everything. The technology is growing. More and more people are buying smartphones, and they could get access to the data as instantaneously as they can, at least in the urban setting. But now, this is something limited in terms of economics, right? Because not everybody could afford a smartphone or internet. There are still some people, some limitations to this because of the economy, because of the cost of this technology. So what science should bring is something which could be less cost effective, which people are still working on. So basically you are talking about all these functional materials that you see around the world that is going into the technology. So what they are talking about is how to reduce the cost of bringing technology to the most poorer people. And I'm sure like these kind of experiments have been pursued in developing countries. And definitely if you see something very expensive here, labor is one thing which could reduce the cost, and people are working on logistics to reduce the cost in every sense. But right now the science by itself cannot bring in that. There has to be unity among different departments like politicians, the other places where the community awareness is greater by in all lengths. Just not by science and technology, just scientists cannot do anything. It has to be a teamwork. And if people as a collective souls believe or start believing that enough is enough, we have to bring back the system to order, this has to happen from an individual point of view. For example, it has to be self-realization that I need to change in order to change the world. And then science could come in and facilitate your transformation. But just science itself will not be able to do it. Science itself can only provide you tools, facilitate you physically, but spiritually inside is something that you need to decide, I need to do this. And then science can come and facilitate to develop the tool that will bring in the peace. So it is just that scientific limitation is only up to the physical reality, that's it. When it comes into spirituality, science cannot do much, but the people who are pursuing science can. So that is what our call is to the scientific world and the other people too in different walks of life. It doesn't matter what you do. Even if you are like a screw in a car, it's still important. Right? So it doesn't matter what functional role you play in the society, but as a collective humanity, what we need to do, and then definitely science can help. I'm sure already it's helping, but the reach has to come from within. So right now we are seeing it from outside, like somebody help me, that cannot happen. It's like I help myself and then people can collectively help each other. So this awareness is what we need to bring into people by, I'm sure Brahma Kumar is doing a wonderful job in spreading this thing, and the same thing I would really say that if everybody, every community, every religion, every country comes in and says, let's do it, and then science would definitely be of help. Because science is made of scientists, people. They are still people. They also need to change. So I'm definitely sure, but the decision has to be made, and for that, the awareness is the first thing. The thought that I need to change has to be instilled in every human soul we come across. If he doesn't have it, we need to teach him, educate him, saying what is the implication of our deeds. That is the important thing. So I would start with awareness, and then definitely science and all other things will come and help us as tools. Definitely.
One thing I really connect to is what Dr. Karthik said, and then between science and technology, science and religion or spirituality is, like you said, how your soul is a battery and it can be charged. And so it's like you can take yourself as an iPad, first thing in the morning, last thing at night, connect, and then you send messages out and you get good messages back. But if you don't do that, then you'll get the message failed, could not be sent.
Yeah.
And then you just recharge yourself.
Yeah, you need to boot in an order.
Yeah.
You need to boot your system in an order, and then you need to shut down in an order. If you don't do that, your computer is going to crash.
That's funny. I was thinking about the impact of Facebook, and as Dr. Karthik was saying, economically not everyone can afford a computer. There are almost 7 billion souls, but I believe, what was the latest numbers of individuals who own computers? No, it's less than 1 billion. It's less than that.
It's less than $1 billion?
I
Yeah.
think it was less than $1 billion. That was the last I heard from Microsoft. Yeah. So remember, there are 1 billion people today who don't have proper drinking water. And so, I mean, when you look at really the numbers of life, I mean, how could we live in a world where there's abundance and you've got 1 billion folks who don't have proper drinking water? It makes you wonder what's going on. But I was thinking that one of the things that I think everyone has and everyone can afford is radio. And perhaps maybe one of the areas we haven't looked into in terms of encouraging spirituality to become more accessible and more aware to everyone is maybe our investment in radios again. I know it's an old technology, it's old school. But you know, at the end, that's what you got left is radio. You're going to be told on radio where to go, what to do, how to do it, and when. And so that is in every village. Not every village has a satellite television, or an iPhone, or a smartphone. But every village has a radio. So I think that perhaps, to my brother's point, definitely Facebook is a nice venture. And then to complement technology at its highest level, go back to basics. Whatever happened to good old radio? You know, could be another way that science can help.
I think we should point at all types of communication. It need not be just smartphones and Facebook and Twitter. It can be any types of communication, including newspapers. There are still communities which just depend on their daily dose of news from newspapers. They don't even go electronic. And most of the time radio, they just listen to songs or just news. So maybe we should include section like sports, like spiritual awareness.
Yes, I think that would be a great thing. You know, nowadays you can do just about anything you want to because of technology. But again, going back to basics might be a nice thing. And again, to complement Dr. Karthik's role of collectivity, I mean, however amount of us that are here together, let's say if we all says collectively, well, we want to do a radio station for spirituality. If everybody came together and said, we're going to do it, it's easy. But if one person says, I want to do it, it becomes difficult.
Yeah, it is teamwork
So
anywhere.
it's a similar thing about spirituality. If you've got one person who says, I need to change the world, and they're by themselves, you know how that feels. But if you have a collective number of individuals who believe, we're going to change the world, you don't have any burden of changing the world. You know it's just going to happen. So you're just patient. And you're just qualifying yourself for the change. Now be mindful. Don't ask for change, and when the change comes, you don't want it. Because, you know, there needs to be qualifications to live in a world that has no sorrow, right? So if you want a world that has no sorrow, how well is your department of not taking sorrow or giving sorrow? So these are the things we have to qualify ourselves for now. And that's what this time period is for, preparation. On June 11th, we're really hoping to create an awareness. And if everybody in this room and those who are watching actually leave here and tell another person about their realization, you just awoken one person. The ripple effect will spread. And so we need that support. You know, we need to get everyone included into the story of our transformation anymore. It's not the Ramayana that's going to transform the world. It's all of us. But yes, we have taken a step way ahead of everyone, perhaps. I mean, we are a very strong unit of 1 million yogis in 100 countries with 9,000 rajas, ran predominantly by women. And that's not a small thing in the 21st century when everybody wants to be individual. So we're aware of the power of collective thinking. And so if we can just keep, when we leave these programs, don't turn your back on what you've learned, use it. And keep finding ways to enhance it. And see how we all can work together to help our brothers and sisters to reach the higher ground. There's a spiritual tsunami taking place. And only that which is imperishable and eternal will last. That which is an illusion will not. So anything that we're attached to will not last. And anything that we love because it's real. We have to invest in this more.
Thank you, Sister Jenna. Thank you, Dr. Karthik. Thank you all of you for being here, and I think this has been a very nourishing discussion.